The main ingredient of this fuel appears to be nitro compound. Running could result in a fatal explosion.
I don't like where this is going.
Today's episode will be different. GameTalk is a review series at its core, though while I still will be reviewing a game today, right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that this game is amazing. A masterpiece, if you will. So today, I'm not only going to be reviewing a game, I'm also going to be explaining to you why the Resident Evil Remake is the perfect survival horror game. Hello everyone and welcome back to GameTalk, where we talk about games. Now I couldn't wait for the... Hold on. I forgot something. For fuck's sake. There, that's more Halloween-like. Now I couldn't wait for this video, as it was a long time coming, but at the same time, I've also been dreading it. And the truth is, guys, the reason I've been dreading this video is because I've been too scared to play this game. Yeah, bully me all you want, I have no shame there. What I do have shame for is me thinking the PS1 was haunted after playing the original Resident Evil. Why do I intentionally embarrass myself on the internet? Resident Evil was the scariest game ever made, and let me tell you right now, that's a big was. The game aged, and not like whiskey where it ages to perfection, this game aged terribly, and terribly quickly I might add. The scares became non-existent, the story became boring, the visuals became bland, and the voice acting, surely it wasn't good to begin with.
It's Forrest. Oh my god.
And not only did the game itself age, but became rather obsolete, with Resident Evil 2 and 3 getting all of the first game's aspects and expanding on it, and a dominating competitor, Silent Hill, coming into the scene along with that game's sequel. It didn't look good for such an amazing relic of the past falling from grace, especially considering how it basically birthed the survival horror genre and all the amazing titles that came out of it. So, what was the compromise made?
Resident Evil.
The Resident Evil Remake. Never have I played a game so immersive, so scary, so anxiety-inducing, so orgasmic. Resident Evil 2002 is referred to by many as the scariest game ever made, the best remake ever made, the best horror game ever made, even the best game ever made. Wow, okay, that is a stretch, but it very well might be the case. This game is too good. It blows my mind. And the thing is, it holds up so well that when it was re-released in HD in 2015, I didn't know the remake already existed. I thought that was the remake. A 2002 game I thought came out in 2015. That's how ridiculously well it holds up. And as much as I will always love the original PS1 version and how it introduced me to the horror genre, I apologize, but you are nowhere near the league the remake resides in. I mean, do I even call this game a remake then? It's similar, but at the same time, incredibly different. Similar with the same story and settings, but different with the mood it portrays, with its atmosphere, different with how it likes to scare the player, and different with all the little knickknacks it changes from the original. And also, different because there is no
Jill Sandwich.
You're right.
No Jill Sandwich. I mean, is there any point reviewing this game anymore? Before we start though, I wanted to touch on the box art. It's simple, but perfect in my opinion. You got the Resident Evil name in slightly distorted text with a dark, dirty background. And while I think the US box art isn't horrible, the PAL one screams simplicity perfection. This tells me that this is Resident Evil, and that's all you need to know. Perfection. The gameplay today I'm going to be showcasing will be coming from the HD remaster of the remake released in 2015 for Xbox One, PS4 and PC. But I'll be reviewing the core 2002 game itself, as the HD remaster is only a slight visual increase. But, ladies and gentlemen, it's time. Who do you think I should pick? Chris or Jill? I can't say that with a straight face, I'm sorry. Of course I'm gonna pick Jill. You must be a real libtard to pick Chris over the Master of Unlocking.
The Master of Unlocking.
Remember the intro? The original live action intro.
Joseph!
Yeah, that intro. It's a nice intro, especially that part where they're all getting chased by zombified dogs and Chris and the rest of STAR's Alpha team decide to do this.
No! Don't go!
Yeah, just stay still. Apart from the fact that you're getting chased and your life is in danger, no, just stay still and slowly lower your hand while the rest of you look up into the sky. This is the most hilarious thing I've ever seen. But then we have the remake. From the outset, you can instantly see the effort put into it. This intro scene is tense and the horror is paced magnificently. Get it? Paced? Because they're running? I'm a comedian. The lighting and saturation supports the foreboding and unknown atmosphere, and this is the perfect way to start a horror game. There is no flashy, jumpy, cheap editing, no overacting cliche Hollywood horror actors acting like imbeciles. None of that. Just a stunning, beautiful cinematic intro, ushering the player in like you are one of the members of Star's Alpha team.
Chris, this way.
But hey, I'm getting ahead of myself. Resident Evil's plot. Star's Bravo team has gone missing in the Arklay Mountains while investigating a series of bizarre murders where the victims were reported eaten. Their compatriots, Alpha team, are now on the search for Bravo team where they find a derelict of Bravo team's helicopter along with the mutilated body of their pilot, Kevin. As they continue searching through the woods, they get attacked by zombified dogs and Brad, Alpha team's pilot, decides to be a dick and bail on them. Then, they head for the only safe place in sight. A mansion. The members of Alpha Team include Chris Redfield, generic good guy, Jill Valentine, the master of unlocking, Albert Wesker, guy who wears sunnies no matter how dark it is, Joseph Frost, the guy who died, Brad, the helicopter guy, and the best character in video game history, Barry Burton, the best video game character in video game history. Then the game starts off with a perfect quote to get you prepared. Enter the survival horror.
There are only 3 STARS members left now. Captain Wesker, Barry, and myself. We don't know where Chris is.
This is where you take over and the game starts. Wesker orders Jill and Barry to investigate a gunshot that came from the dining room, or should I call it, a dining room. You're given free control of Jill at this point before you get interrupted by it. The original zombie reveal is nothing short of iconic. This was so scary back in the day, and it was so iconic that it became a trend for the later Resi games to reveal the first zombie in a cinematic way. Obviously now it just looks like a guy who dipped his head in wet cement and looks like he enjoys ketchup too much. While I can still praise the camera work and the pacing of this scene, well except the stupid head part in the uncut version, it unfortunately isn't scary anymore. But the remake... Mum? I need a nappy change. You're now given free control along with a not so clear objective. After Wesker goes missing, Barry explains that they will need to find a back door. Then again, you would want to find out where the hell you even are and why all these bizarre things are happening. And you aren't given any written objectives either. You need to be paying attention to know what to do. You'll find most doors in the mansion will be locked, so the gameplay revolves around exploring, finding items and keys while either killing or avoiding the threats that stand in your way. Your standard survival horror formula. Your character, or should I say Jill, because no one uses Chris, controls in the same way most horror games of this era controls, like a tank. Up and down on the directional pad will move you forward and backward, left and right will turn you around. A control style which is hard to grasp if you've never experienced it before, though the way the game plays is designed with these controls in mind, so you will be thankful that they were implemented. If you do struggle with them, there is an alternative control style, which is a point the stick in the direction you want to go style. Obviously much simpler and more modern, however I do not recommend playing with this control option, as the camera angles are fixed, so when the camera changes you could be facing a whole other direction, and since you're not moving forward you end up running a whole nother way, and this could potentially cost you your life in game. So tank controls are recommended. Unfortunately, strafing isn't a feature, and this is a shame because Silent Hill was doing this since 1999. It is a little bit awkward without strafing for a bit, but you do get used to it. Resident Evil, just like the original, refuses to hold your hand. No checkpoints or waypoints. The saving system is also limited. There are no autosaves, however, save rooms are placed throughout the game and will include an item box and a typewriter. The typewriter is where you save, but you can only do so with ink ribbons which are in short supply and have to be found in game. So if the game was sentient, it would be saying, oh, you haven't saved in 4 hours of gameplay and you died? Oh well, fuck you, enjoy doing the exact same thing again for the next 4 hours, bitch. The ink ribbon system I have always adored. It adds a level of stress while playing, as you don't want to abuse your saves because you might run out of ink ribbons. You should work hard to save your progress in game instead of autosaves. So basically it's work hard, play hard, be hard. I don't know where I'm going with this. Your inventory is also a key factor of gameplay. Inventory space will depend on the character you chose. Chris has 6 slots and Jill has 8, which may not seem like a huge difference, but believe me, there has been many times where I've desperately wanted more slots with Jill. Chris in return would be slightly faster and will take a little bit more damage, but then again, not worth it. And Jill gets a lockpick. A lockpick. Yeah, it doesn't open every door, but it is much more convenient than finding small keys all around the place. Plus, Chris doesn't have the story segments with Barry. Playing Chris over Jill is like playing PlayStation All-Stars over Smash Ultimate. You'll be in your inventory a lot throughout the game. Examining items, unlike the original, is done manually. You'll have to turn items over and inspect them a lot to reveal more information about them, or can reveal a whole new item in general. Some puzzles are even solved in the examining screen itself. Combining items is also a common thing you'll do. This is done for puzzles, but mostly is done for healing items. Classic Resident Evil formula. Herbs can be found around the place, and different colored herbs will do different things. Green herbs will heal physical wounds, blue will heal poison wounds, and red can be combined with both of them to make the herbs more potent. And yes, I'm saying it correctly. Herbs, not herbs. Americans, fix your shit before I start pronouncing it ALO or Silent Ill. Silent Jill. The weapons consist of a combat knife, which is virtually useless as it does little damage and requires you to get really close to the enemy. The only reason I used it at all was to finish off the enemies that were on the ground. The handgun, which will do little damage but has long range. It has 15 rounds in one magazine, and ammo to find for it is the most common. The shotgun, which is a high risk, high reward weapon. You can stay at a safe distance and use 2 or 3 rounds, or you can wait until the enemy's right up close to you, especially the zombies, to the point where wait half a second longer and be mauled by them to blow their head off in one hit and get signed for phase. The grenade launcher, previously named Bazooka, which can take various types of shells, acid shells, grenade shells, and incendiary shells. It's not extremely common to find this type of ammunition, so I would recommend conserving them for clearing out rooms with heaps of enemies or killing stronger enemies or bosses. And a revolver, which hits like a truck and will one-shot most enemies, but the ammo to find for it is the most John scarce of them all. There's also a flamethrower, which you will never actually use, because it's an exclusive weapon to Chris. A self-defense gun, which is ridiculously powerful, but will only be able to shot once, as there's only 1 bullet to find for it, as the other was used to shoot, I don't know, Slenderman or something.
Are you shitting in my dick?
And there's also some bonus weapons you can get on multiple playthroughs. You can even get things called defensive items, which when grabbed by enemies, you can attack them by pressing the left bumper to avoid getting hurt. Jill finds battery packs for a stun gun, Chris finds flash grenades that he shoves into the enemies' mouths, and they both find daggers. These items are also very limited, so it's not recommended to get too close to the enemies a lot. We haven't really covered much scary stuff yet, and being Spooktober and being one of the scariest games I've ever played, I think it's time that we... Gotcha, didn't I? I'll see myself out. Now, when it comes to horror games, what makes them scary? Well, I guess that can be viewed from an objective or a subjective standpoint. But with Resident Evil, there's a lot to be afraid of. One of the main features is, of course, the monsters. Resident Evil has created some masterful abominations throughout its history, such as the Leech Men from Resident Evil 0, or the Lickers from Resident Evil 2, and don't even get me started on Mr. fucking X. But we gotta give it to the original Resident Evil. It has its classic nightmares, the zombies. And these zombies are absolutely iconic. They actually sound like horrifying reanimated corpses in the remake. Apart from the original where they just sound like they slept wrong in their neck and just woke up in the morning. The dogs are back and they're brutal as ever. They'll grab onto your arm, tackle you, and it will usually come in packs. The furry, overgrown spiders that will show their fangs if you go close to them, which everyone calls them overgrown, but in Australia, they're about that size anyway. Maybe even bigger. The huge sharks in the shark tank, which you barely even saw in the original, but here there's a whole intense moment where you're in a chamber within the shark tank as they attack the glass, and if you don't solve the puzzle in time, the chamber gets flooded. The ravenous hunters, which get introduced in the same way, after you explore the guardhouse and revisit the mansion. The cutscene plays where it's a first-person view of something moving incredibly quickly and opening the same door you just walked through, but this time there isn't an awkward moment where the hunter just slowly walks towards you. No, as soon as the cutscene ends, it goes for you. And of course, those things in the lab, whatever they were, and the big snake, formerly known as
Terrible demons. Ouch!
But what if I told you that the remake has a few surprises of its own? And let me tell you, while there's only 2 new monsters the remake has to offer, they are far scarier than all the others I mentioned. First off is Lisa Trevor. Lisa Trevor is a hideously deformed woman with multiple faces and skin collected from her victims. She was a girl who lived in the mansion and became one of Umbrella's test subjects and was used in the development of the T virus, which has made all the enemies around you. However, she was one of the initial cases of the G virus, which became a prominent part of the story in Resident Evil 2. Lisa cannot be killed, only delayed, similar to Mr. X in Resident Evil 2. You barely see her throughout the game, but when you do, it's nothing short of terrifying. You'll hear her rustling chains along with the moans of agony in the distance. And you usually encounter her in cramped areas like the walkway in the woods outside the mansion, the outside cabin, and the underground caves. Is she scarier than Mr. X? Probably not, but she is goddamn horrifying. But the other new enemy is not only my favorite enemy in Resident Evil history, but also what I believe to be the scariest. When you kill the zombies in this game, it won't take long for you to notice that when you exit the room and go back, their bodies are still there. This never happened in the original as the bodies disappeared, so you'll brush it off until you backtrack through the room one more time, and this happens. Yep, I need a new pair of pants again. These monstrosities are called the Crimson Heads. They will relentlessly chase after you, running faster than you. They'll hit harder than regular zombies, and the anxiety builds up when you enter a room, and the only thing you hear is the fast footsteps that aren't your own. Not to mention their blood-curdling growls. Every zombie will become a Crimson Head, but you can prevent it. First off is if you blow their heads off with a shotgun. If you do this, they won't come back as a Crimson Head. This is a dangerous task as there's only a small window of opportunity to do that in combat before you become their Jill sandwich. If you do kill them and haven't blown their head off, it's not all doom and gloom yet. You can find a lighter and a fuel canteen to fill up with kerosene, usually found in safe rooms, and burn their bodies before they turn. However, kerosene is extremely limited, so only burn the bodies that block your path in areas you know you'll be revisiting. And sometimes you'll attempt to burn their bodies, but oh fuck! The Crimson Heads are one of the things that made this game for me. Worrying about not only killing zombies, but making sure to blow off their heads and walking past their bodies with the uncertainty that they will rise up again and chase after you. Or you could just trap them in a room and watch them as they run on the spot to no avail. I feel like this is some sort of animal abuse. While the monsters is definitely one of the main contributing factors to the horror in this game, it's not the only thing that makes it scary. Something else that adds to the immersion and the horror is the camera angles, and Resident Evil, especially the early games, are infamous for them. They're fixed with a slight movement, hiding threats inches away without you even knowing, so when the threats appear, a panic starts. And it's no ordinary jump scare panic, no. This is your fight or flight instinct kicking in, and this is where you have to make a quick choice. Choice 1, run back the way you came. Definitely the safest choice as you can try to find another way around, though a lot of the time, there isn't another way around. Choice 2, run around the threat. Not an easy task because as you can see, a lot of the walkways and places you encounter the enemies are very narrow. But when possible, it's probably the best option, but maybe not the safest option. Choice 3, eliminate the threat. The safest option by far. Or is it? Yeah, you're getting rid of the threat, most likely from a long range using a pistol, but then your ammo gets depleted, and there's not a lot of ammo to go around. And who's to say when you waste it, you really need it after? All these choices are instantly thought in your head when you see an enemy, and since you don't have a lot of time to make a decision, a panic happens. What I just explained is done for other survival horror games as well, but none creates a panic like the Resident Evil Remake does. Well, except for one of my favorite survival horror games, Garfield: Threat of the Space Lasagna. But another thing horror games have to do really well to make it immersive and scary is have a good atmosphere. Resident Evil has such a grim atmosphere. I guess you could call it evil. And this was something that the original captured really well. But both these games have such different atmospheres for having basically the same premise. Being stuck in a spooky mansion, quiet cold woods, or an abandoned lab. The original has more of a dangerous and evil feel to the atmosphere. The remake has more of an abandoned, dead, cold sort of atmosphere. It's not my favorite atmosphere in any game ever. I believe the Silent Hill series does a much better job with their atmosphere, but this one fits so well. It's like you're exploring a stranger's home that was ruined by an evil corporation. If you've played the original Resi as a kid, you know how scary this mansion was and how it sort of stuck with you. But now, while different, it reinvites your childhood fears and twists them, and it gets progressively more intense as you progress towards the Umbrella Lab. And the save room theme? is one of my favorite tracks in any video game soundtrack. It's so relaxing, but reminds you at the same time, once you leave, you aren't safe anymore. And just like the original, I tend to just wait in the safe rooms for nothing, just taking it all in. And I love a specific quote from the game. When you press the interaction button on a lantern in the East Wing storeroom in the mansion, it says, "There's a lantern laying on top of the supplies. The warm light makes you relax." That quote, unironically, makes you feel relaxed, with the warm looking lantern along with the dark, cold, pale rest of the room. I don't know, I can bumble on for decades about how the atmosphere is pretty much everything to a game, but I won't. I will tell you that this game knows what mood to present at every single moment. Whether the room is dark, light, playing music or not, it's spectacular, nothing short of it. Something else I found spectacular are the quotes the game gives you. The first one you get, I already mentioned, is "Enter the survival horror." You get that when you start the game, however each time you load your save you'll get more. Some include "Fight your fears and survive," or "Fear can't kill you." But it's like the game is sentient and knows what it can do to the player. When it says "fear can't kill you," but I interpret that as fear cannot kill you, your actions will. But who's to say that your fear won't lead to the actions you make? This game has its own personality to it, and it shines because of it. Speaking of shining, what else does this remake do to stand out from the original? Obviously, I'm not talking visuals. I mean, there's obviously no difference there. Although the remake still uses pre-rendered backdrops to give it that distinct Resident Evil look to it. Obviously, the amazing voice lines from the original have been mostly replaced, but not entirely. It's rewritten, yes, though it's almost as if they're referencing the old voice lines. I'm gonna play some comparisons for you.
Captain Wesker, where's Chris?
Stop it! Don't open that door!
But Chris is...
Hey, Wesker, where's Chris?
Jill, no. You don't want to go back out there.
But we've got to find...
See if you can find any other clues. I'll be examining this. Hope this is not Chris's blood.
See if you can find any other clues. I'll be examining this. Let's just hope it's not Chris's.
But how about you, Barry?
I have this.
Thank you. I'll take this then.
What about you?
Oh, don't worry. I like the buddy system we have here.
I see. Thanks, I'll take it.
See you later.
Ciao.
And after Barry saves Jill from a room where the ceiling nearly crushes her...
Oh, Barry!
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
Now, while we all love the Jill sandwich, the line that was rewritten for this part couldn't be any more perfect.
Barry.
That was a close one. A second late, you would have fit nicely into a sandwich.
Really?
You know what else the remake does different from the original? The mansion. Not just the way it looks, but the layout is different. And not incredibly different, but different enough to where the objectives stay the same as the original, but the way to get to the objectives are different. Some doors are now locked or unlocked, new keys are added, some areas where there used to be dead ends now lead to hallways or staircases, and even some new puzzles are added. Some of course are the same, such as the V-Jolt puzzle in the guardhouse, where you find a series of simple math problems written on the wall, and interpret that in chemicals to add to each other until you get one called the V-Jolt, which can be used on Plant 42's roots to kill it instead of fighting it. Definitely one of my favorite puzzles in the series. But another has changed, the cradle to grave puzzle, where you push buttons on pictures of a person's life in order to get an item. Where here there's a bunch of stained glass pictures of people wearing a bracelet, a necklace, and a crown. And you have to turn on or off each light facing the pictures to change the color of each picture corresponding with the final picture. Even some iconic moments in the game have changed. Something that hasn't changed is the iconic Keeper's Diary, where he unknowingly gets infected with the T-virus, and with each diary entry he slowly becomes less human and loses touch with reality, with the final entry becoming two iconic words to the Resident Evil franchise: itchy. Tasty. After you finish reading, he literally just comes out the closet. And remember the dog hallway? This was probably the scariest moment in gaming back in the day, and this is what it's like in the remake. That's right, it teases you. It's so iconic that Capcom knew you were expecting it, but it doesn't happen. This really plays with your expectations even if you played the original. I mean, it is sad that the dog hallway isn't a thing. That is until you run through the hallway a second time. You never fail to surprise me, do you, Capcom? I mean, you really did surprise me with Resident Evil 5 and 6, didn't you? In terms of story, though, nothing too much has changed. But just like the Resident Evil 2 remake compared to the original, there's more of a focus on character rather than events. And by that, you don't learn too much about the characters, but you do care for them much more than you did in the original, where every member of STARS was the most bland, boring, shallow imbecile ever. And I do love how you feel more sympathy for Barry when he does get blackmailed by Wesker. The game brutally punishes you for not trusting Barry and not giving him his gun back by killing him off. Yeah, respect Barry or you can't have him, bitch. And Wesker seems far eviler in this game than he ever did before, but he does look a bit too much like Duke Nukem in his photo here, or the Terminator, or number 1 from Codename Kids Next Door, or Johnny Bravo. Actually, in the uncut version of the original, he looked more like Johnny Bravo. The endings you get are determined by... I don't even know, to be honest. If you be a dick and don't trust Barry and leave Chris behind, Jill, you selfish little twat! But I got the one where Jill, Barry, and Chris escape with Brad after you blow the tyrant in the mansion compound to smithereens. And there's more endings with Chris, but let's face it, you won't see him because no one cares about him. How do I even end this video? Did I even mention anything that I disliked about the game? Could it be a perfect game? No, there is no such thing as a perfect game. There will always be flaws to it, and this game has a few. First off, the voice acting is a bit underperformed, especially by Jill and Chris's voice actor. But it isn't terrible, most of the time they do a good job. The lip syncing is very off though.
Calm down, I didn't want to do it, believe me, I can explain.
Don't lie to me!
I could give the excuse that this was an early time for lip syncing in video games, but then again, Silent Hill 2 did a much better job with that, and came out a year before this game. And lastly is an issue I didn't have with the actual Resident Evil remake, however with the remaster. The PC version doesn't cater for monitors above 1080p. It is a slight issue for me since I have a 2K monitor, but it's not that noticeable, and that's it. I don't really have much problems with this game. I mean, the story could have been a bit better. The Resident Evil 2 remake had a fantastic story compared to the original because it had a larger focus on character. Here, yeah, it's better than the original and there is more of a focus on character, but definitely had missed potential. But this game is really good. I mean, best game ever made material. And that's coming from someone who played it for the first time 4 years ago. I never even owned a GameCube. It's probably not the best game ever made, not even the best horror game ever made. I have made a lot of comparisons to Silent Hill in this video, but that's because these games do horror in such different ways. I think Resident Evil is more direct with its horror, but I think the Silent Hill games, more specifically Silent Hill 2 or 3, are more masterfully designed, more clever with their horror. But as a survival horror game, this game absolutely takes the cake. It's all about thinking ahead, managing your items, managing your saves, thinking about what could be around each corner, and expecting the unexpected. This game absolutely kills the survival horror competition. Nevertheless though, Resident Evil makes the good list, and gets a 9.5 out of 10. Is it the best horror game ever made? I don't think so. Is it the scariest? Well, it is the scariest one I've ever played. But the sad thing is, this video doesn't do it justice. Now I want you all to do a huge favor for me. Play this game. It's only 30 Australian bucks on the PS Store and Steam, and you will definitely get your money's worth for a tense, scary, immersive experience. You will not regret it, I promise you. This game is special, a once-in-a-lifetime sort of thing, and I don't think it can be topped. The Resident Evil 2 remake was fantastic, but unfortunately didn't perform to the likes of this game. Resident Evil 2002 will always hold a special place in my heart, being an absolutely horrifying, beautifully atmospheric, and an incredibly immersive work of art. This isn't a survival horror game, this is the survival horror game.
You gotta love Barry.
I think we just broke the record for the longest episode in the series. So if you made it here, I want you to comment, you gotta love Barry, so I'll know you made it. I just want to thank you all so much for watching this video. I've been planning it for a long time. And I do want to apologize that this video wasn't uploaded on Halloween. I'll try to address why that wasn't the case soon. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and give this video a share if you enjoyed. Thank you all so much once again, and I will talk to you before you know it. See you later.